Hey everyone, Richard Gibbons, Executive Director for Southwest MLS, and today what I want to talk about is what we call the triple threat. It's the three different rule sets that a realtor has to follow, and then the different organizations that enforce those. This is really being made for a new member orientation, but it's also a good refresher for other members as well, because it really helps delineate who's responsible for what. So let me just kind of dive into it here. So the three different things you have to look at are you have the Southwest MLS rules and regulations, you have the NAR code of ethics, and then you have the New Mexico real estate license law and real estate commission rules. This image that I have here is it's like three monoliths standing in front of you, right? And I just kind of want to help delineate the differences between them to start with. So for one, you have the Southwest MLS rules and regulations, and that deals with data and accuracy and things that can be clearly defined, right? So that's things like a listing says it is a 3-bedroom house, but you go there and it's only a 2-bedroom house. It's things that are very black and white, things that are very clear, things that there's really no arguing with. Anytime you have anything that has a little bit of gray area to it, it's very likely not going to apply to the MLS rules and regulations. That's where the other two come in. So that's where next up you have the NAR Code of Ethics. So remember that the Code of Ethics is something that realtors ascribe to. It's something that they follow above and beyond what is required by the Real Estate Commission and by license law. So it deals with things like ethics. It has standards of practice. It deals with professionalism. So that's where you'll get into things like, using other people's stuff without permission, or operating a real estate transaction without clearly defined things in writing, or lots of other issues like that. And then finally, there's also the real estate. The New Mexico Real Estate Commission has their own license law and real estate commission rules, and those primarily deal with protecting the public. So that's going to be things that are on your broker duty sheet. They're also going to deal with things like inaccurate advertising and things like that. So that's kind of the different rule sets. Now, then you get into the organizations that are responsible for this. And one of the jokes I always make here is that for being an independent contractor, you probably feel a bit like Peter Gibbons from Office Space, that you feel like you have 8 bosses, right? So what I want to do is kind of take a second and delineate like who's responsible for what for you as well. Now, one thing I want to make very clear right up front here is this is not I'm telling you this because I don't want you to contact me for the wrong thing. That's not the goal here. In any of these situations, if you're ever confused about who you should go to report something, just call GAAR. We're here to help. We're here to guide you in the right direction. Everybody here on staff understands these differences and can get you to the right place. So, so don't take this as I'm beating you up and don't call us if it's not about us. That's not it. If there's ever an issue, call GAAR. We are here to help. But just to kind of go through each one of them for you, starting at the closest to you and then moving to the furthest away, really. So the closest to you is your brokerage. That is who you join in order to practice real estate. So they should always be your first source for any kind of training or mentoring. And your qualifying broker is ultimately responsible for your practice. If you do something wrong and you're standing in court, it's going to be your qualifying broker standing next to you. So they should always, 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 always be your first point of contact for any kind of questions, especially dealing with, any kind of insurance or legal issues or contract issues or possible legal issues. They should always be your first contact because they are the ones who are primarily responsible for your practice. Now, next you have the Greater Albuquerque Association of Realtors. So that is the trade association that you are a member of, and they are primarily responsible for enforcing the Code of Ethics. We also have mediation and arbitration, so if you have things like an earnest money dispute or things along those lines, they can help with that. They're also responsible for your member records, for transferring offices, just general guidance, direction, lock boxes, a lot of different member benefits that are available through GAAR that you can see over the member benefits video. Next up is Southwest MLS. Of course, Southwest MLS is responsible for the Southwest MLS rules and regulations. So that, the primary purpose of the MLS is aggregation, compliance, and syndication of data. So we enforce the MLS rules. We ensure accuracy. And one of the things that happens sometimes is the Southwest MLS process is, okay, look, the data's wrong. We can verify it's wrong. People get a fine. We actually try to educate so they don't get fines, but because that's the easiest compliance process, people often think that something from Code of Ethics or the New Mexico Real Estate Commission rules can fit into the Southwest MLS compliance box, and that's often just not the case. If there's any kind of a gray area, some Southwest MLS compliance rules cannot apply. So then next up, you have the New Mexico Association of Realtors. So they don't really enforce any of the things we've talked about here, but they are primarily responsible for the forms. So all of the forms in the New Mexico Realtors library are updated by the Forms Committee and by Ashley Strauss Martin up there. They also have the legal hotline, which is Ashley Strauss Martin, and then they're also responsible for the forms provider, which right now is either Transaction Desk or SkySlope. So if you have questions about forms, they would be your primary contact in order to have questions answered like that. And then, of course, any kind of legal questions, here at GAAR and Southwest MLS, we're not lawyers. We don't pretend to be, nor do we want to be. So if you have any kind of legal questions, we're often going to point you to the legal hotline through the New Mexico Association of Realtors. And then, of course, finally, you have your state regulatory body. Like I said before, their mission is to protect the public. So they manage license law, they manage complaints from the public. You're going to see them to do things like transfer or inactivate your license. A real key to mention is that when you do that, when you tell them you're transferring or inactivating, they don't tell us. So if you do that, make sure you reach out to the membership team at GAAR and let them know as well, so that we can make the right changes in our records to inactivate you, transfer your offices, or anything like that. But they enforce broker duties. So, within the New Mexico Realtors forms library, there's that broker duty sheet that is included at the beginning of the listing agreement. I believe it's also included the purchase agreement at a couple other places. Those duties are through the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. So if you have a complaint about somebody violating the broker duties, the complaint would go to the state regulatory body, which is the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. So hopefully that helped. I just kind of wanted to break down the differences between the different organizations that you're a part of when you act as a realtor in New Mexico, just to kind of help clarify, who's responsible for what kind of different rule sets you have to follow, and things like that. Of course, if you have any questions, we're always available to help. The number at GAAR here is 505-842-1433. Give us a call. We'll get you the right answers, and we're always here to help. So thanks, and have a wonderful day.